My father laid hands on me for inventing a language with my siblings, then told CPS I had a skin disorder to explain the welts, so I used the cameras he installed to track us to secretly record him admitting everything. Now his life is ruined, and he's sending letters asking why we betrayed him. It was 6:47 a.m. when I ticked the first task on my dad's to-do list. A check mark next to prep breakfast dishes, nothing special, just pen on laminated paper. Or at least, that's what my dad thought. You see, my dad was an effing psycho. He thought that kids should be seen, not heard. So if me and my siblings ever dared to talk to each other, he thought it meant we were conspiring against him. And the punishment was, well, I don't even want to describe it, but trust me when I say it would make your skin crawl. The cameras went up 3 weeks ago. Every corner, every hallway, even one facing the chore chart in the kitchen. For efficiency monitoring, Father said, but we all knew better. He wanted to catch us whispering, to punish us in the way that filled the void my mother left behind. That's when I noticed Marcus tilting his check marks, just slightly left, barely noticeable. But I saw it the morning after Father screamed at him for taking too long in the bathroom. I see you. I'm here. That's what that tiny tilt meant to me. I started tilting mine back. In response, Jamie drew a circle instead of a check. That's when I had my light bulb moment. We met in the bathroom that night, water running to mask our whispers. We can talk through the charts, I said. My siblings stared at me like I'd lost it, but slowly, we built our language. Check mark. I'm okay. The letter X. No or danger. Circle. Help needed. It might seem small, but in a home designed to strip your innocence and freedom, it was all we had. And for months, it worked. When Sophie got her period, our father had removed all the pads on the grounds of her being too young, but Jamie's circle pattern spelled out where he'd hidden some from school that day. Soon we got cocky. We coordinated helping each other on Thursdays when Father had committee meetings. The pressure of the pen stroke said how we were feeling. Light marks meant hanging in there. Deep grooves meant about to break. I should have noticed Father watching us more carefully. How our improved efficiency made him suspicious instead of pleased. You're too quiet, he'd say over dinner. Too coordinated. I watched his face change as he studied weeks of charts. And one day when me and my siblings came home from school, grabbed my arm and dragged me to the part of the kitchen where he kept the leather whip hanging on the wall. You made a language. In my house. Behind my back. Each word dropped like ice. I bent over on the chair and stuffed my mouth with my sleeve. 1, 2, 3. The punishment was swift. Too swift. I knew he had more in store. The next morning, I woke up to see my father hanging up individual charts in each of our rooms, staggered schedules so we'd never overlap, meals and shifts, even bathroom breaks were timed. He installed locks that only opened from the outside. Since you love your little charts so much, he said, watching me ice my bruises, you'll each fill out hourly productivity reports. Every task, every movement. But Father, in his need to document everything, made a crucial mistake. The hourly reports required us to log everything, including disciplinary corrections received. He wanted a paper trail of our obedience. What he created was evidence. I started writing exactly what he did. 3:47 p.m. Received 3 strikes for unauthorized communication. 4:15 p.m. Locked in room, dinner withheld. Marcus caught on quick. Sophie too. Even Jamie, with his shaky 11-year-old handwriting, documented everything. Father never read them. He just filed them away in his locked cabinet, proof of his excellent parenting system. It was my volleyball coach who noticed first. I'd been changing in the locker room when she saw the marks, bruises. Elena, what happened? I fell, I said automatically. She didn't buy it. 2 days later, there was a mandatory equipment check that required lifting our shirts to ensure proper uniform fit. She documented every bruise, every welt, every healing mark on me and my sister. I smiled, knowing the end was finally near. And a week later, it happened. We were in a parent-teacher conference when she asked my father to see his innovative organizational system that I'd mentioned. Father, always eager to show off his control, brought the charts and reports. Fascinating, Coach Williams said, flipping through weeks of our self-documented abuse. May I photograph these? I'm working on a paper about family organization systems. His ego won. Of course. I've been thinking of writing a parenting book myself. The police showed up during his next committee meeting. Coach Williams had taken everything to CPS, along with her photos of our injuries that matched our reports exactly. My dad was finally going to pay for ruining my childhood and stealing my innocence. I watched through the window as the police cars pulled up outside our house. 3 of them. Lights flashing, but no sirens. Father wasn't home yet, still at his committee meeting for another 20 minutes. My hands shook as I gathered my siblings in the living room. They're here, I whispered. Marcus nodded. Sophie clutched Jamie's hand. We'd rehearsed this moment in our heads 1,000 times, but now that it was happening, my mouth felt dry. The doorbell rang. Officer Patterson introduced himself, a woman officer beside him. They asked to speak with each of us separately. I went first, showing them the fresh welts on my back, explaining our chart system, how we'd documented everything. The woman officer took photos while Patterson wrote notes. But when Father arrived home 45 minutes later, everything changed. He walked in calm, collected, even smiled at the officers. They detained him for questioning in the kitchen while we waited in our rooms. I pressed my ear against my door, straining to hear. Creative writing exercises, Father's voice carried clearly. Elena's quite the storyteller. Gets it from her mother's side. The kids have been acting out since the divorce. My stomach dropped. He was ready for this. And these marks? Patterson's voice. Volleyball injuries. Both my daughters play. Sophie's clumsy, always diving for balls she can't reach. The boys roughhouse constantly. You know how siblings are. 2 hours later, they released him pending further investigation. Father gathered us in the living room the moment the police left. His face was stone. Family meeting. Now. We sat on the couch, Jamie trembling beside me. Father paced back and forth, hands clasped behind his back. We're moving. My brother Dale has a farm in Montana. Fresh start for all of us. I've already called the movers. We can't just leave, I said. We have school. I have volleyball. You have nothing. His voice was ice. You have what I give you. And right now, I'm giving you a chance to start over. Unless you'd prefer to keep lying to the police? He pulled out his phone, showed us the recording app. My blood ran cold as I heard my own voice from earlier, talking to Officer Patterson. He'd been recording through the security system. Imagine how disappointed they'll be when they hear you practicing your stories together, planning what to say, coaching Jamie on his lines. We hadn't done that, but his phone had hours of audio from our bathroom meetings. Out of context, it would sound exactly like what he claimed. Pack your things. Movers come Friday. That night, I snuck my phone from its hiding spot behind the loose baseboard in my closet. I had to tell someone. Opening the recording app with shaking fingers, I held it close as Father called another meeting at 2 a.m. If any of you speak to teachers, coaches, or police again, he said slowly, you'll find out what real discipline looks like. Montana has different rules. No nosy neighbors, no bleeding heart teachers, just us and Uncle Dale. I uploaded the audio to cloud storage, fingers flying across the screen. 3 minutes later, Father burst into my room. He'd seen the Wi-Fi usage spike on his monitoring app. Give it to me. I handed over the phone. He smashed it against the wall, pieces scattering across my floor. But the upload had finished. The evidence was safe in the cloud, even if I couldn't access it anymore. The next morning, Mrs. Patterson from CPS arrived. Father greeted her warmly, invited her in for coffee. He'd prepared for this too. Medical files spread across the kitchen table, official-looking documents with letterheads and signatures. Elena has dermatographia, he explained, showing her articles he'd printed. Her skin welts from the slightest pressure. We're seeing specialists. Sophie has the same condition, though milder. He produced prescription bottles, medical appointment cards, even photos of normal skin reactions he'd found online that looked like our injuries. Mrs. Patterson took notes, nodding sympathetically as Father spun his web. The boys have vitamin deficiencies that cause easy bruising. Iron, D, K. Here are their blood test results. All forged. I could tell by the way the papers were too crisp, too new, but Mrs. Patterson didn't notice. We're actually moving to be closer to a specialist in Montana, Father continued. The stress of the divorce hit them hard. Their mother abandoned them, you know. Ran off with her personal trainer. Lies. All lies. But he told them so smoothly. After Mrs. Patterson left, Father implemented new rules. We had to rehearse scripts about our happy family life. Every meal, we practiced. What did you do today, Elena? He'd prompt. I went to school and volleyball practice. I'm grateful for the opportunities you provide, Father. And how do you feel about our family? We're very close. You take excellent care of us. Marcus rebelled first. During Mrs. Patterson's second visit, he deliberately messed up his lines, stammering and contradicting himself. Father's jaw tightened, but he covered smoothly. Marcus has anxiety. The police visit really shook him up. That night, Marcus was confined to the basement. No meals, no bathroom breaks except twice a day. But Marcus was smart. While down there, he found boxes shoved behind the water heater. Mom's things. 3 days later, when Father finally let him up, Marcus whispered to me during our bathroom shift overlap. Divorce papers. Mom filed them. Cited abuse. There's a journal too. Where? Memorized what I could before he caught me. Father had burned everything by morning. But Sophie, quiet Sophie who noticed everything, had snuck down with her phone the night before. She'd photographed pages while Father slept. Not many, but enough. The moving trucks arrived Thursday morning. Father supervised every box, every piece of furniture. We weren't allowed to pack our own things. He did it all, checking for contraband, for evidence, for anything we might use against him. I had one chance. During lunch at school, I called Coach Williams from the cafeteria phone, but Father had coached us even for this. Hi, Coach. I'd like to order a large pepperoni pizza, I said. She paused. We'd developed this code for volleyball plays, but I'd never used it outside practice. Extra red pepper? She asked. That meant, are you in danger? Yes, and can you deliver it tomorrow morning? Early, like 6 a.m. early. Please understand. Please. Address? I gave her our home address, then hung up. Father checked phone records, but a pizza order wouldn't raise flags. Mrs. Patterson showed up at 5:45 a.m. the next morning, Coach Williams with her. Father answered in his robe, confused but maintaining composure. Just some follow-up questions, Mrs. Patterson said. May we come in? The house was chaos. Boxes everywhere. Furniture wrapped in plastic. Father's mask slipped for just a second. We're decluttering, he said. Spring cleaning. But it was November. They interviewed us again. This time, Jamie broke. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe fear of Montana, but when Mrs. Patterson asked about our home life, he started sobbing. We have to say the words right, he cried. If we don't say them right, we get locked downstairs. I don't want to go to the farm. Please don't make us go to the farm. Father's face went dark. He's overtired. The move has been stressful. Mr. Thompson, we're going to need you to delay any relocation until the court reviews this case. You can't do that. I have rights. These are my children, and they have rights too, Coach Williams said quietly. Father's brother Dale arrived that afternoon, tall, broader than Father, with the same cold eyes. They spoke in low voices in the study, but I caught fragments through the vent. Should have been harder on them from the start, Dale said. I told you, kids are like horses. Break them early, or they'll buck forever. That night, new rules. Dale introduced spiritual fasting for our own good. No breakfast or lunch, only dinner. Clears the mind, he said. Makes you grateful. Sleep deprivation came next. Fire alarms at random hours. Safety drills, Father called them. We'd stumble outside at 2 a.m., 4 a.m., stand in the cold until he decided we'd learned proper evacuation procedure. By the third day, Sophie fainted during volleyball practice. Coach Williams drove her to the hospital herself, stayed while they ran tests. Dehydration, malnutrition, exhaustion. I'm keeping detailed records, she told me when she brought Sophie home. Everything. Don't give up. I was too tired to give up, too tired to do anything but survive. But I kept writing. Every punishment, every withheld meal, every 3 a.m. fire drill. I turned them into English essays. Fiction, I labeled them. But Ms. Rodriguez wasn't fooled. Elena, these stories, Stories, she said after class one day. They're just stories, I mumbled. Are they? I met her eyes, said nothing, but she understood. The fingerprint locks came next. For your safety, Father said as he installed them on our bedroom doors, so no one can get in. But we couldn't get out either, not without his permission, his fingerprint. Marcus figured out Father's laptop password 2 weeks later. Father always sat at the kitchen table, laptop angled toward the window. Marcus noticed the password reflected in the picture frame behind him. Late one night, while Father showered, Marcus got in. Emails to a lawyer, plans to sue the school district for harassment, claims of parental alienation. He was building a case against Coach Williams, saying she was poisoning us against him. We need to do something, Marcus whispered. He's going to destroy everyone who tries to help us. That's when I remembered the cloud storage. My phone was gone, but the account existed. If I could get to a computer, school was our only chance. We each kept journals now, hidden in our lockers. Real documentation, not Father's forced reports. Sophie had printed her photos of Mom's journal pages. Marcus wrote down everything he remembered from the divorce papers. Jamie drew pictures when words failed him. The fire code violation was Elena's idea. She told the school counselor about the fingerprint locks during a routine check-in, how we couldn't exit our rooms in case of emergency, how the fire drills had prepared us for fires we couldn't escape from. The inspection happened while Father was at work. Officials found the illegal locks, the windows painted shut, the smoke detectors he'd disabled in our rooms so the alarms wouldn't wake us unless he triggered them manually. This is a death trap, the inspector said. Father hired a lawyer, a good one, but we had weapons he didn't know about. The custody hearing was set for December 15th. Father prepped like it was his doctoral defense. New suits, fresh haircuts for all of us, rehearsed answers about our loving home. But I'd been busy too. Late nights in the computer lab, I'd uploaded months of our chore chart communications to a private YouTube channel. Every tilted checkmark, every circle, every desperate message spelled out in task completions, time-stamped, date-stamped, corresponding with the injuries Coach Williams had documented. Father presented perfectly at first, calm, collected, concerned about his children's well-being. He talked about the stress of single parenthood, the challenges of raising 4 children alone after their mother abandoned them. Your Honor, I said when it was my turn, I'd like to show you something. The YouTube channel played on the courtroom screen. Weeks of silent communication, desperate coordination between siblings forbidden to speak. I explained our code, showed how the messages matched the punishment reports Father had made us write. This is fabricated, Father said, voice rising. She made this recently. You can fake timestamps. Jamie stood up, small, shaky, but determined. January 15th, I got 10 hits for spilling juice. January 23rd, locked in my room for humming. February 2nd, sit down, Father snapped. But Jamie kept going. Date after date, punishment after punishment. His 11-year-old voice reciting horrors with the mechanical precision of someone who'd replayed them every night. Sophie showed the photos, Mom's journal entries, her handwriting clear even in the blurry images. He's getting worse, one entry read. I'm scared for the children. The lawyer says I need more evidence, but how much more can they take? Marcus testified about the basement, the burned documents, the emails about suing the school. He spoke clearly, calmly, like Father had taught us. But this time, the words were ours. Then Uncle Dale spoke. Your Honor, he said, not meeting Father's eyes. I need to say something. Father's face went white. I told my brother those techniques, the sleep deprivation, the food control. I used them on my horses. But last week, I saw him lock Sophie in the closet for humming while she did dishes. Locked her in for 2 hours. That's not training. That's cruelty. You said, Father started. I know what I said. I was wrong. Father lost it then. Really lost it. All his control, his careful presentation, gone. Children need discipline, he shouted. They need structure, not coddling, not freedom to run wild. I gave them everything. I gave them order. The judge had seen enough. Mr. Thompson, I'm granting emergency custody to their maternal grandmother, a voice said from the gallery. We turned. A woman with Sophie's eyes and my nose stood in the back row. Familiar but foreign, like a photo come to life. You told us she was dead, Marcus whispered. Mrs. Chen has been petitioning for visitation rights for 3 years, the judge continued. Mr. Thompson, you're facing charges of child endangerment, false imprisonment, and document forgery. They led Father away in handcuffs. He didn't look at us, just stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, like this was just another problem to solve. Grandmother's car smelled like lavender and coffee. She had snacks in the back seat, bottles of water, like she'd known we'd be hungry. Sophie sat in front, tears streaming down her face. Jamie fell asleep against Marcus's shoulder before we even left the parking lot. I never stopped fighting, Grandmother said softly. Never stopped trying to get to you. I believed her. For the first time in years, I believed an adult. The house she took us to was small, but warm. No cameras in the corners, no locks on the bedroom doors, no chore charts or hourly reports or scheduled bathroom breaks. You're safe now, she said as she showed us our rooms. Real rooms, with windows that opened and doors we could close from the inside. That night, I heard Jamie humming while he brushed his teeth. Sophie and Marcus were talking in the hallway, voices above whispers for the first time in years. Normal sounds, free sounds. I thought about Father in his cell, probably making mental notes about inefficiencies in the prison system, planning his appeal, his next move, his return to control. But it didn't matter anymore. We had something he never understood, something all his systems and punishments couldn't destroy. We had each other. And now, finally, we had freedom. The chore chart language saved us in the end. Our silent rebellion, born from desperation, became the evidence that set us free. Sometimes the smallest acts of defiance grow into revolutions. Sometimes a tilted checkmark changes everything. The first few weeks at Grandmother's house felt like learning to breathe underwater. Every morning, I'd wake up expecting to hear Father's footsteps in the hallway, checking our productivity reports. Instead, I'd hear Grandmother humming in the kitchen, making breakfast that we were actually allowed to eat. But freedom came with its own challenges. The custody arrangement was temporary, pending a full investigation. Father had been released on bail within 48 hours, and his lawyer was already filing motions. Grandmother showed us the legal papers over dinner one night, her weathered hands trembling slightly. "He's claiming I'm unfit," she said, voice steady despite her shaking fingers. "Says I'm too old, that I abandoned you all when your mother died. But Mom's not dead," Sophie said quietly. "He just told us that." Grandmother's face crumpled for a moment before she composed herself. "Your mother. She tried to leave him, multiple times. The last time she had to disappear completely, even from me. To keep you safe, she thought staying away was better than risking his retaliation." The truth hit like cold water. Our mother was alive somewhere, hiding from the same man who'd controlled our every breath for years. School became our sanctuary, but Father's influence reached even there. Other parents started avoiding us at pickup. Whispers followed us through hallways. One afternoon, I overheard Mrs. Henderson telling another mom that Father had warned them about our pathological lying and manipulation tactics. Marcus came home with a black eye that week. Some kids had cornered him, saying his dad told them we were making everything up for attention. He'd fought back, earning a suspension that went straight into Father's growing file of evidence against us. The scheduled visitations were the worst part. Every Saturday, a court supervisor would arrive to take us to a neutral location where Father waited. He'd sit across from us at a sterile table, speaking in measured tones about how much he missed us, how sorry he was for any misunderstandings. "I've been seeing a therapist," he'd say, eyes never leaving mine. "Dr. Whitman says family reconciliation is possible with work from both sides." The supervisor would nod approvingly, making notes about his cooperative attitude. They didn't see how his fingers tapped specific patterns on the table, the same rhythm he used to tap before punishments. They didn't notice how Jamie's hands shook every time Father leaned forward. After the third visit, Sophie stopped eating again, not completely, but pushing food around her plate, taking tiny bites only when grandmother watched. The old patterns were creeping back, even in safety. "He's going to win," she whispered one night, curled up in my bed. "He always wins." I held her close, feeling her ribs through her pajamas. Not this time. But doubt gnawed at me too. Father's lawyer had filed a defamation suit against Coach Williams. The school board was pressuring her to recant her statements. Ms. Rodriguez had been transferred to another school for unrelated reasons. One by one, our allies were being systematically removed. Then came the letter from Father's psychiatrist. Dr. Whitman wanted to evaluate us, claiming our false memories and shared delusion were signs of trauma that Father hadn't caused but was being blamed for. The court approved it. The sessions were torture disguised as therapy. Dr. Whitman, a thin man with cold gray eyes, would separate us and probe for inconsistencies. "Your father says you were always imaginative," he'd say, pen poised over his notepad. "Tell me about the stories you used to write." Every word felt like a trap. Admit to creativity, and he'd claim we invented the abuse. Deny it, and he'd say we were lying about everything. Marcus started having panic attacks before each appointment. Jamie wet the bed for the first time in years. Grandmother fought back in her own way. She connected with other families who'd escaped abusive situations, building a network of support. She documented every regression, every nightmare, every time one of us flinched at sudden movements. But Father's side had professional testimony. We had the word of traumatized children. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Uncle Dale showed up at grandmother's door on a rainy Tuesday evening. He looked smaller somehow, shoulders hunched against more than just the weather. "I can't do this anymore," he said, water dripping from his coat. "What we did to those kids, what I helped him do." Grandmother let him in, though every instinct probably screamed against it. We sat in the living room, Jamie pressed against my side as Dale talked. "It started with our father," he said, staring at his hands. "He had systems too, charts for everything, punishments for imperfection. I thought we were passing on discipline, structure. But watching him with your kids, seeing it from the outside," he pulled out his phone, showed us videos he'd secretly recorded. Father demonstrating his techniques on a mannequin, explaining how to break a child's will without leaving marks that would last, how to use food and sleep as control mechanisms, how to make them grateful for basic necessities. "I was going to use these for my own kids someday," Dale said, voice breaking. "God help me. I thought it was wisdom." But videos of demonstrations weren't enough. Father's lawyer would claim they were taken out of context, that Dale was being manipulated by us. We needed more. That's when I remembered the cloud storage. My phone was destroyed, but the account existed. If I could access it from a computer, the audio of Father's threats would be there. But I'd need to remember the password, and Father had been standing right behind me when I'd created it. School computers were too monitored. The library required ID that would create a trail. But grandmother's elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen, had an ancient desktop she barely used. She let me borrow it in exchange for help with her garden. My fingers shook as I typed in various password combinations. Father had taught us that passwords should be complex, unmemorable, changed frequently. But in my panic that night, I'd used something simple, something he'd never guess because it went against everything he'd drilled into us. Freedom 2024. The account opened. There it was. 3 minutes and 47 seconds of Father describing exactly what would happen if we talked to authorities again. His voice, clear and undeniable, detailing punishments that would make our previous experiences seem like gentle corrections. I downloaded everything, made copies, sent them to grandmother's lawyer. But I also did something else. I shared the link with every parent at school, every teacher who'd ever shown concern, every mandated reporter who'd been fooled by Father's act. The reaction was immediate. Mrs. Henderson, who'd avoided us for weeks, showed up at grandmother's door in tears. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "He was so convincing, so normal. I have kids too, and if someone was doing this..." More parents followed. Teachers who'd been silenced came forward with their own documentation. Coach Williams, emboldened by community support, refused to back down despite the lawsuit. Even some of Father's committee members started started questioning what they'd overlooked. But father wasn't finished. He played his final card at the next custody hearing. A woman walked in, professionally dressed, familiar in a way that made my heart stop. "Your Honor," father's lawyer announced, "we'd like to call Elena Thompson's biological mother to testify. The woman who looked like Sophie, who had my nose, who'd been hiding for years, she was here, but not for us. Father had found her somehow, threatened her, or promised her something, or broken her the way he'd tried to break us. My children," she said, voice hollow, "need stability. Their father provides that. I abandoned them. I'm not fit to judge what's best for them now." Sophie made a sound like a wounded animal. Marcus gripped the table so hard his knuckles went white. Jamie buried his face in grandmother's shoulder, and I stood up. "That's not our mother," I said clearly. The courtroom erupted. Father's lawyer demanded order. The judge called for silence, but I kept standing, kept speaking. "Our mother has a scar on her left hand from when she tried to protect Marcus from a belt. This woman doesn't. Our mother knew Jamie was allergic to strawberries. When offered fruit at the recess, this woman took a strawberry. Our mother would never, ever side with him, not after what he did." The woman's composure cracked. She looked at father, then at us, then at the judge. I need to speak with my attorney." It turned out father had hired an actress, someone who looked enough like our mother to fool a casual observer, coached with enough details to seem credible. But he'd underestimated us. We'd spent years memorizing every detail of our lives to survive. We knew the difference between real and performance. The revelation shattered father's credibility. The judge ordered an immediate investigation into witness tampering, fraud, and obstruction of justice. Dr. Whitman's license was suspended pending review of his evaluation methods. The supervisor who'd overseen our visitations admitted she'd been receiving payments to write favorable reports. But the damage was spreading. Other families came forward, cousins we'd never met, former neighbors, people who'd noticed things but been too afraid or too convinced by father's public persona to speak up. The pattern went back years, generations even. Dale's testimony became crucial. He provided not just videos but correspondence between father and other men who shared his parenting philosophy. A whole network of abusers hiding behind the mask of strict discipline. The investigation expanded beyond our family. Through it all, grandmother held us together. She found us real therapy, not the manipulative sessions with Dr. Whitman, but actual help. She let us be angry, be scared, be broken. She didn't try to fix us or rush our healing. She just loved us, consistently, and without conditions. The final custody hearing was set for spring. Father would be there, out on expanded bail, still fighting for control. His lawyer had new strategies, new experts, new ways to twist the truth. But we had something more powerful than his systems and manipulations. We had each other. We had truth. We had survived. As we prepared for the last battle, I thought about those tilted check marks that started everything. Such a small act of rebellion, barely noticeable. But sometimes the smallest cracks can bring down the strongest walls. Sometimes a whisper can become a roar. The chore chart still existed somewhere in evidence lockup, laminated proof of our silent revolution. I didn't need to see it again. Its language lived in us now, transformed from desperate code to battle cry. We see you. We're here. We'll never be silenced again. The spring hearing loomed like a storm cloud. Father's lawyer had filed 17 different motions, each one more desperate than the last. He wanted Dr. Whitman reinstated as evaluator. He demanded access to our school records. He even tried to subpoena our therapy notes, claiming grandmother was coaching us. But something had shifted in the community. Parents who'd shunned us now offered rides to appointments. Teachers slipped us encouraging notes. Even the principal, who'd been neutral throughout everything, started documenting father's harassment attempts when he showed up at school demanding information. 3 weeks before the hearing, father made his move. I was walking home from volleyball practice when a car pulled alongside me. The window rolled down, and there he was, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses like some terrible disguise. "Get in, Elena. We need to talk." I kept walking, heart hammering. He cruised beside me, matching my pace. "I know about the YouTube channel. My lawyer says it's inadmissible. Edited, he'll claim. But we both know the truth, don't we?" My phone was already recording in my pocket. I'd learned to start it whenever I felt unsafe. "You were always the smart one," he continued. "Too smart. That's why this hurts me more than you know. I only wanted what was best. For you," I said, still walking. "You wanted what was best for you." His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. For a moment, I saw the mask slip, saw the rage underneath. Then he smiled, cold and calculating. "Your grandmother's house has such old wiring. Terrible fire hazard. You should be more careful." He drove off before I could respond. I ran the rest of the way home, uploaded the recording immediately, and called grandmother's lawyer. Within hours, we had a restraining order. Father had violated his bail conditions by approaching me. But the threat lingered. Grandmother hired an electrician to check every wire, every outlet. We installed new smoke detectors, kept fire extinguishers in every room. Father had taught us to be paranoid, and now we turned that weapon against him. Marcus discovered father's next strategy by accident. He'd been researching our family history for a school project when he found it. Adoption papers. False ones, but elaborate. According to these documents, we weren't father's biological children. He'd rescued us from our substance-addicted mother and raised us as his own. "He's going to claim we're not really his kids," Marcus said, showing us the forged papers he'd found on a genealogy website. "That he's been our savior all along, and we're ungrateful." Sophie had been quiet through all of this, but she'd been busy. She'd contacted every family member she could find on social media. Aunts, uncles, cousins father had cut us off from. She'd been collecting photos, birthday cards, anything that proved our real family connections. "Look," she said, spreading them across grandmother's dining table. "Here's Jamie as a baby with father at the hospital. Birth announcement from the newspaper. Our real birth certificates from the county records office." Father's web of lies had grown so complex he'd forgotten the simple truth. Reality leaves traces. The week before the hearing, Uncle Dale came by again. This time, he brought boxes. Evidence, he said simply. Everything I could find at the farm. He kept records of everything, thinking he was building a parenting empire. Inside were notebooks filled with Father's handwriting, detailed plans for breaking each of us, timelines for when to introduce which punishment, research on psychological manipulation techniques, and worst of all, correspondence with other fathers who use the same methods. There are 12 of them, Dale said, voice hollow. They call themselves the architects. They share strategies, compare results. Your father was writing a manual. Grandmother's lawyer nearly cried with relief. This was evidence Father couldn't explain away or claim we'd fabricated. His own handwriting, his own plans, his own admission of calculated abuse. But Father had one last card to play. The morning of the hearing, Jamie woke up violently ill, vomiting, shaking, burning with fever. The hospital found traces of syrup of ipecac in his system, something that induces vomiting but isn't typically tested for. Someone gave this to him, the doctor said. It's not dangerous in small doses, but it would make him too sick to testify. We knew who, we just couldn't prove it. Father had alibi after alibi. But Jamie, even sick and shaking, insisted on going to court. He doesn't get to win, he said, gripping my hand. Not this time. The courtroom was packed. Father sat with his new legal team. 3 lawyers now, all in expensive suits. He'd dressed conservatively, played the part of the concerned father perfectly, but I noticed his fingers drumming that familiar rhythm on the table. Our lawyer presented everything methodically. The original chore charts, the documented injuries, the audio recordings, Dale's videos, the correspondence between the architects, Father's own notebooks detailing his plans. Father's team attacked each piece. The charts were misinterpreted. The injuries were from sports and play. The audio was taken out of context. Dale was mentally unstable. The notebooks were theoretical, never implemented. Then came our testimony. I went first, walking through our daily life, the escalating punishments, the calculated isolation. I kept my voice steady, factual, no emotion for them to dismiss as hysteria. Marcus followed, explaining the basement discoveries, the burned evidence, the systematic destruction of our mother's memory. He brought receipts, literally. Photos of credit card statements showing purchases of locks, cameras, monitoring equipment. Sophie presented her evidence with quiet precision. The photographs, the family connections, proof that Father had lied about our mother, our grandmother, our entire family history. She'd even found our mother's death certificate, or rather, the lack of one. Jamie, still pale and shaky, stood up last. Instead of speaking, he rolled up his sleeves. Old scars, new bruises, the full map of years of abuse written on his small body. Then he spoke, not about the pain, but about the fear. I used to count the seconds between his footsteps, he said. I knew if they were too fast, someone was in trouble. Too slow meant he was planning something. I haven't slept through a whole night in 3 years because I'm always listening for those footsteps. Father's lawyer tried to cross-examine, but Jamie had found his voice. You want to know what's real? Jamie asked. Every Thursday when he had meetings, we'd help each other with homework. That's all, just homework. And he put cameras up to stop us. What kind of father puts cameras up to stop his kids from helping each other with homework? The judge called a recess. When we returned, Father took the stand. He was perfect at first, calm, reasonable, explaining how 4 traumatized children had misunderstood his structured parenting, how the divorce had affected them, how they'd created a fantasy to cope. Then our lawyer asked about the architects. Father's composure cracked. He claimed the notebooks were fiction, research for a novel, but when presented with emails between him and the other fathers, timestamps matching the dates in his notebooks, he started to unravel. You don't understand the pressure, he said, voice rising. 4 children, no support, a wife who abandoned us. Your wife filed for divorce citing abuse, our lawyer interrupted. She didn't abandon anyone. You threatened her until she fled. She was weak, Father shouted. Just like them. They need structure. They need discipline. Not this coddling that creates soft, useless adults. The mask didn't just slip. It shattered completely. The judge's decision was swift. Full custody to grandmother. Supervised visitation only. Pending criminal trial. Restraining orders for all of us. Mandatory therapy for Father if he wanted any chance of future contact. Father stood as they prepared to lead him out, his eyes finding mine across the courtroom. This isn't over, he mouthed. But it was. The criminal trial would come later, but we'd already won the war that mattered. We were free. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. We slipped out the back, grandmother leading us to her car. But Mrs. Henderson was there, along with Coach Williams, Ms. Rodriguez, who'd driven 2 hours to be there, and dozens of other parents and teachers. We're sorry, Mrs. Henderson said. We should have seen. We should have helped. They formed a protective circle around us, walking us to the car. The community that had been fooled was now our shield. That night, we had a celebration of sorts. Just pizza and board games. But it felt revolutionary. No one timed our bathroom breaks. No one monitored our conversations. Jamie hummed while he played, and no one punished him for it. Sophie found our mother's contact information a week later. She'd been living under a different name 2 states away, working as a teacher. The first phone call was awkward, painful. She cried. We cried. But she was alive. And now we could start rebuilding what Father had destroyed. The other architects fell one by one. Our case had opened investigations into their families. 11 more groups of children were removed from homes. Father's manual became evidence in multiple cases. Dale started his own journey. He sold the farm, entered therapy, began unlearning generations of abuse disguised as discipline. He sent letters apologizing, not asking for forgiveness, but acknowledging the harm. Months later, I stood in my new room at grandmother's house, looking at the chore chart I'd kept. Evidence, but also reminder. We'd turned Father's weapon against him. We'd found our voices in the silence he'd forced on us. Marcus was teaching Jamie to code. Sophie had joined the art club. I'd made captain of the volleyball team. Normal teenage accomplishments that felt like miracles. Father was sentenced to 12 12 years. The other architects received similar sentences. The manual he'd been writing became evidence of premeditation, turning what might have been lesser charges into serious jail time. We testified at the criminal trial too, stronger now, supported by proper therapy and love. Father watched us speak, and I saw something new in his eyes. Not rage or control, but confusion. He genuinely couldn't understand how his perfect system had failed. Grandmother officially adopted us the following spring. The judge who'd overseen the custody hearing performed the ceremony. Coach Williams, Mrs. Henderson, Ms. Rodriguez, and dozens of others filled the courtroom for a very different kind of hearing. Family isn't about control, the judge said. It's about love, support, and the freedom to become who you're meant to be.